This was one of the most gut-wrenching, depressing episodes in all of Game of Thrones history and seasons, and I almost didn't do the review for it because of that. Game of Thrones, Season 4, Episode 8, The Mountain and the Viper.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters and Game of Thrones enthusiasts of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the awesome and gruesome and just completely ass-backwards unjust tale that is Game of Thrones. Now, I want to start this off by saying that I have become much more enthralled with Game of Thrones after, in this season especially. I rewatched the first 3 seasons with my wife, my oldest son, and really started kind of diving into a lot of the mythos, the background, the histories of the families, things of that nature. And mainly because I had gotten countless messages, received countless messages, tweets, comments. Hey Jim, you really, I want to see you review Game of Thrones, you know. And I kept thinking, man, there's too much to remember, too many names, too many faces, too many places, right? And as I have gone through the season, I think that I have gotten markedly better. And going from the episode 1 review to this one, I think that I'm probably light years better. But that's just because I have that much more knowledge of it. This episode, though, it unsettled me and messed with my stomach and my head so bad. I didn't sleep well last night, even though I'm fully aware and conscious that it's a fictional tale and that it isn't real, you know. But that's how much it bothered me. That's how much it ate away at me. And then I actually contemplated not even bothering to do a review for this one because I thought, you know what? My opinion, I'm not going to give a fair shake to this because I'm so irritated about how the events played out. But luckily, though, a cooler head has prevailed over here. I have, been able to kind of calm down and start to look at it objectively and look at the big picture of things and hopefully, wind up coming through and wind up putting out a good review for you, brothers and sisters. So without further ado, we'll get right into it over here. And certainly after the 2-week break that they gave us in hiatus building up to this one, it was that much more impactful, I believe. And that's just my personal opinion, my 2 cents on that, which are probably only worth about a penny. But everything opens up over here, and we wind up actually seeing Molestown. And if you remember Molestown, I'm assuming that it's very close to where Castle Black is in the Wall, because this is where Samwell wound up taking Gilly a few episodes ago, and he wound up, to keep her safe from his rapist and murdering brothers of the Night's Watch, he brought her to a brothel. And she's not banging people for money, she's just kind of like hanging out and like cleaning up and watching the other girls' kids, the other prostitutes or whatever that are there. And as things open up in Molestown, we see Gilly taking some shit from this other just prostitute, horror-looking person. And honestly, she looks like she's probably got like syphilis, like the clap, gonorrhea. She's probably got the trifecta going on there in STDs. Just looks like a dirty human. Like, I wouldn't fuck her with a stolen dick. Let's put it that way. So, anyway, she's giving Gilly some shit because the baby kept her up last night or whatever the case was. And as this is all happening, Gilly winds up going. Remember, she's a wildling, right? So, well, I mean, technically, I mean, she was, part of one of Castor's daughters / wives, whatever. But so she knows how they think and how they act, and she winds up hearing what sounds like an owl call to the other woman. And it turns out that it's the wildlings. They've come to attack Molestown and pretty much, just thrash and rape and murder and kill and rip people apart like they do. Now, we already saw this a few episodes ago when they did it, and honestly, it was a gruesome, brutal scene, and I didn't particularly like the scene just because it seemed to be overly grotesque and brutal just to be overly grotesque and brutal. But this one went much quicker, and really what wound up happening in the end is that as you see the wildlings, of course, Ygritte is part of it too, Ygritte, Jon Snow's former, sexy sort of part-time companion, fuck buddy, whatever you want to call her. But she's there, and she winds up going and taking out the nasty prostitute. But in an act of kindness, she winds up hearing the baby as she's kind of going through and searching this area for other people that may be alive, and she opens up the little curtain there, and as there's blood dripping down from the floorboards above, she sees Gilly and, of course, her baby, and she kind of goes, thinks about it for a second, and then she goes, shh, keep quiet, like, I'm going to let you go on this one. So we see that Ygritte still has a heart. which I think is nice, because after she went and shot Jon Snow 3 times after, you know, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, right? And she was not happy with Jon Snow. And even in the last wildling attack, she was certainly getting involved. It wasn't like she was trying to spare anybody's lives. She was killing, you know, if not more than everybody else, right? So that whole scene winds up playing out and goes and kind of transitions into the next scene, which is they get word at Castle Black of the attack on Molestown, and they know that now Mance Rayder's army must be close, coming from the north, because obviously the wildlings are close approaching from the south, and they've got like 102 guys to go and defend the Castle Black, you know. So we wind up seeing Samwell is one of those characters that for me, he's either really likable or he's really repulsive, depending on the episode. Sometimes it's just like, all right, dude, enough is enough. I'm tired of you fucking mumbling around being like, oh, I'm just so weak and just so pitiful, you know. And sometimes I look at him and I go, I can see why your father exiled your punk ass. And then there's other times, and it's probably the majority of the time, that I actually do feel for him because he is a good, caring person, right? And he's very smart, too. Let's not forget that. But he's just kind of that ultimate, like, pussy character that you gotta feel bad for, you know. But sometimes I think they overdo it. In this particular scene, I feel they overdid it. He's sitting there and he's just, oh, and I sentenced her to die. I brought her there. I told her it would be safe. Me, whine, right? And it's one of the other guys from the Night's Watch that winds up, it's a couple of them that actually bring up, they're like, listen, she survived Craster, okay, being north of the wall, right? And then, of course, you know, growing up in Craster with his just beating and raping or whatever else he did there for fun and for pleasure. And she was able to go and survive after the whole shit went down over there and then get away and everything else. So, you know, she's been through a lot. She made it to Castle Black. So they're basically saying, listen, there's a chance she got out. There's a chance she survived, you know. So Sam winds up agreeing, yes, there is a chance. The bottom line is that we know this is the setup for what's going to happen in the next episode and possibly trickle into even the season finale, which is the huge battle that's going to be at Castle Black. Now, I'm hoping, beyond hope, because we haven't seen him in a couple episodes, that my call is that Stannis and Ser Davros and his money and his ships that he got coming out from Braavos, and because remember, he was very interested in what was going on over there at the Wall when he got word at the end of last season. And I think that's where he's heading, because he realizes that there's going to be no kingdom and no claim to a throne if the wildlings and the White Walkers and Mance Rayder and the giants and everything like that get through the wall, right? So that's really kind of where that whole scene goes for me. The next scene goes and plays out, though, and we go to Meereen, right, across the narrow sea to Essos, to Meereen. And we wind up seeing Missandre, her name is, and that's the kind of like interpreter, right-hand woman, former slave of Daenerys, right? And actually very, very beautiful woman too, and even more so because you wind up seeing her naked in this particular one. And I don't mean to say she's only beautiful because she's naked. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a complete pig like that. She's always worn a flowing, baggier type of robe, so I had no idea what was going on underneath the hood, if you know what I'm saying, right? She always had a very pretty face, though. Anyways, we wind up seeing this scene get played out between her and Grey Worm. And if you remember a couple episodes ago, they kind of had this little moment where she was teaching him some English or whatever you want to call it, Westerosi. And it was kind of touching, but at the same time, it was kind of weird and creepy. And for me, it was weird and creepy because he's supposed to be this unstoppable killing machine that every ounce of humanity that he had, every shred of dignity and humanity that he had before becoming Unsullied is all gone. And he's supposed to be, again, this unstoppable killing force that has no fear, that does not fear death or anything. You know, he'll fall on a sword if you tell him to. So to see this sort of romance budding between him and this Missandre is kind of weird, especially because we presume that being castrated, he got the ding-a-ling and the balls, you know, the twig and the berries got cut off. I don't know, though, and they question that in this episode. The bottom line is he's over there bathing on one area with some of the other Unsullied guys, you know, and they're having a little ass-slapping fest or whatever they do, and he sees a couple hundred feet away Missandre bathing, right? And absolutely beautiful, gorgeous woman, and again, the body on top of it, just absolutely gorgeous. But he sees her butt naked. And we're not going to see Daenerys naked, obviously, because of her no nudity clause that Emily Clark, I guess, has now this season and from seasons moving forward. Now that she's got a little fame under her belt, she's not going to show her breasts or her ass anymore. But anyway, the scene winds up playing out, and then we get a talk between Daenerys and Missandre. And Daenerys was doing her hair, so that was awfully nice of her, considering she's the queen there. But that's Daenerys, though. Daenerys doesn't... She's the queen, but at the same time, she can still be a down-to-earth kind of cool chick that can sit down and have a drink with you. That's how I look at her, right? And that's why I like her and respect her. She's still young and naive in a lot of ways, but she's also learning, right? So anyway, they have this conversation. That's where they have the conversation about, do they take the twig and the berries? I think she says the stones and the pillar or what, And then after we wind up having this little talk and what have you, Missandei winds up going in and talking with Grey Worm a little bit, and they have this little moment. They share this moment in the throne room where they're actually talking, and he approaches her up on the steps, and he basically says he's really he's grateful for her teaching him these things, and obviously teaching him Westerosi, and he's learned some words from Sir Jorah as well. He winds up explaining. And really the touching part of it for me was that she says, she asks him about, and she basically says she's sorry for what happened, that he was cut, that he's this Unsullied. And he says he's got like no regrets. He's a guy who doesn't look in the past. And what I like about him is that he says the events that happened to me in my life led up to where I'm at now. And serving Daenerys and meeting you and all these other things. And it's really kind of touching because in his own way, he's trying to be like prophetic or poetic or romantic, because he's saying, listen, the cycle of events that have happened, although maybe saddening to some, have shaped me into the person that I am today and put me on the path to meet you and to become part of your life. And to me, that is more important than just simply being, that my life would have been different if I wasn't cut and I wasn't, sold into slavery or born into slavery and then become unsullied and everything else. So a very cool scene, but again, the whole like sort of budding romance between them is a little bit creepy to me, just because I don't really know, I don't quite understand it right now. I think for him it's more of an admiration or an adoration as opposed to like a sexual thing. But honestly, if you've seen her butt naked, I bet you it'd make some women want to go to the other side. She's very, very nice, very attractive woman. We then move on to Moat Cailin and the whole thing between Theon Greyjoy and or Reek as I guess he's called, and of course the crazy sort of psychotic bastard son of Roose Bolton, Ramsay Snow. Now Ramsay, I have to say, has done a great job of filling that asshole void that was left once Joffrey was poisoned in episode 2. A lot of people were so happy and clapping, and I was one of them, that he did die. But at the same time, I felt like there was going to be a void because he was such just a great, hateable character. You know what I mean? You wanted to strangle him, And Jack Gleeson did such a phenomenal job as him. This Ramsay Snow is not quite up to the same level of craziness, I think, as far as Joffrey, because Joffrey had all that power at his command. But he's definitely psychotic and outside of his mind. I love it. He mentally and physically broke Theon so badly that he truly believes that he's this Reek person now, right? So he's got him going into Moat Cailin with basically terms of surrender, more or less. But he's got him acting as if he's Theon Greyjoy, but he still knows in the back of his mind he's Reek. And the scene is actually really like just pathetic the way it's played out. It was done well, but what I'm saying is you look at Theon and you think, my God, this guy is just so pathetic. I wish somebody would just end him, just end his misery, right? He truly is. I mean, he goes and he's trying to deliver the terms to his people, technically, talking about how he's the prince of and this and that of the Iron Islands. And the guy who he's delivering the terms to is just like, because the terms are basically like, listen, you're sick, you're losing anyway. Instead of going and trying to, have us lay siege to you over here, Roose Bolton and his men, for a battle you're going to lose anyway, withdraw now, and we'll basically give you safe passage to get to the shore and to get back to the Iron Islands, right? This guy doesn't want to retreat, but the dude behind him goes and just takes him out, and he's like, listen, are they really going to let us go if we go? Because they realize that, they're fighting this war for somebody that's their lord or their king or whatever this guy wants to say he is. But at the end of the day, Balon Greyjoy is a piece of shit that already went and tried to rebel and revolt and lost one time, right? So there's no reason as his people to go and think that, hey, listen, we're going to be able to hold this. And a lot of people, they're realists, you know what I mean? They're thinking, okay, well, listen, even though surrender is not what we want to do, at the same time, man, I don't want to sit here and slowly die out, So what winds up happening is obviously, Theon, you can tell he's just this broken man. And the guy before that, the first guy winds up getting killed by the guy who just wants to go home back to the Iron Islands. He winds up saying, he goes, only a whipped dog would speak like that. And I really liked that line because, he understood that, listen, you're just broken. That's all it was. You've been broken and tortured, and now you truly believe that retreating is the best thing to do. So anyway, we wind up seeing, though, as the scene transitions into the next thing, all of a sudden you see all these people just like they were flayed and they were just murdered and killed and just tortured, obviously. And Ramsay's like, you didn't think I was actually going to keep my word, do you? And he's like, this is war, you know? We have to make an example of them and let them know that even though we told them they'd have safe passage and we could retreat, we have to, you know, nobody's going to know about that anyway. They're just going to think we took Moat Cailin. I'm going to look good to my daddy. But bottom line is, this is war. We have to strike fear into people. And some people fight like that. That's how some people believe in winning the war, or winning a war that they're in. To strike fear into the hearts of the people that you're fighting by going and doing brutal and just completely inhumane things to them. And that's why they would put people's heads up on pikes and stuff like that, to warn those that might try to go and attack this town, this village, this castle, this keep, that we're not to be trifled with. And guess what? You may win, but if you don't, your head's going to be up there on that pike. So for me, I didn't agree with it, but I understand it. You know what I mean? So anyway, then there's a really nice scene that I thought between Roose Bolton, where he goes and they walk a beautiful backdrop that you see mountains and whatnot. And we find out, too, I'm not a book reader, so I don't know how big everything is and what have you. I mean, I look on the map, but you can only just kind of guess from that. We find out as Roose Bolton tells Ramsay Snow, because he says, what do you see? And he explains that you see the north, 700 miles this way, 300 miles this way, 400 miles this way. And he says the north itself is bigger than all other 6, you know, countries, I guess you would call it, of Westeros combined, kingdoms, you know, whatever. And kingdoms, countries, areas, states, whatever. So I kind of looked at it as, and for my Canadian viewers out there, I apologize for this, but I looked at it as like the north is like Canada. Canada has much more space than the U.S. does, but as you get further and further north, it becomes more desolate, and people just don't want to live there. A lot of it is uninhabited and just wild, and there's a reason for it, because the weather is shit year-round, you know, so that's kind of what the north is. But anyway, the whole point of this, and the reason that the scene was fairly touching, is even though Ramsay is a psychopath, all he really wants at the end of the day is to not be referred to as Ramsay Snow. He doesn't want to be a bastard. We saw that a few episodes ago when he went and he said, no, that's what the Boltons do. The flayed man is on our banners. And he's like, my banners. That's what Roose told him, you know. You're a Snow. You're a bastard. And however Roose did it, he winds up having this scroll where he declares him as his legitimate son, I guess. I guess you can do that shit in Westeros. Maybe now that he's going to be Warden of the North or whatever. Maybe he just made some shit up and forged it. I don't know. But the bottom line is that Ramsay Snow is now forevermore going to be known as Ramsay Bolton, and he's now, you know, cemented and solidified his place, you know, obviously as part of the North and as Roose Bolton's son and heir apparent, you know. And then they also wind up asking if there's been any word from Locke. We obviously know what happened to Locke up north and that he's dead, but basically it's just to kind of get a check-in on, like, hey, did you take care of the Stark kids? And Roose winds up saying, you know what, nobody even cares about a cripple and a small child anyway, referring to Bran and Rickon. So now the next scene for me played out as probably one of the best shot, best done scenes of the series, definitely the season, if not the series. And that's just my personal opinion. Opinions may vary, you know, everybody's got them, and that is what it is. But Sansa, for me, in the first 3 seasons, was a very unlikable character. She was somebody who she just wanted to be queen at first, right? Didn't matter. She fucked over her sister. Didn't care who she screwed over. Just wanted to be queen. Then she realized that being queen wasn't really all it was cracked up to be. And then it was kind of just a pure, like, survival while she was being tormented. And she certainly things did not go well for her at any point. But she continually went and slapped the hand of Tyrion away that was actually trying to show her somewhat kindness, you know, in an area that nobody else was. Nonetheless, though, Sansa, for me, again, up until this season, has been a very unlikable background character that I felt her motivations to be queen were ultimately her downfall, right? And in this particular scene, as she, first of all, Peter Baelish is being questioned by some of the other heads of some of the prominent families, I believe, in obviously the Vale, right? Because what they're doing is they're playing it off like Lysa Arryn's death was actually a suicide, right? Like she jumped out the moon door. And they're questioning, rightfully so. Peter Baelish all of a sudden appears. They all of a sudden get married. And next thing you know, she's done for. She's gone, right? So what they wind up doing is they actually go and bring in Sansa, who still nobody knows is Sansa. They think that it's just that he's her uncle, right? So she comes in, and as the preview played out, they played it out like she was going to tell the truth and roll over on Peter Baelish, but she didn't. And I knew that wasn't going to happen because it was too obvious that that wasn't going to when you saw the damn trailers. But she comes in, And she starts going and putting on an Academy Award-winning performance, and she starts playing these people like a harp, man. Like a fucking harp. She comes in and she says, first of all, she goes and discredits Baelish in the sense that she says, no, you know what? I've been lying this whole time. And they're like, we knew it, right? She goes and she says, I am Sansa Stark, right? And then she goes on to go and do this big tear-jerking fest about what's happened to her and how she was being held as a prisoner in King's Landing, and she was tormented and beaten and raped and forced to eat old lemon cakes and didn't have anybody to change her chamber pot in 2 or 3 hours, you know. Anyway, all the bullshit that she spewed out was just wonderful, because a lot of it was true, don't get me wrong. She was not treated well at all in King's Landing. And then they made me marry the imp, she says, right? And she says, and Peter was the only one. He was my only friend. My only friend. And she's just putting on a clinic, right? Even Baelish, who's the master of lies and deception and weaving all this shit together like he has, even Baelish was impressed, right? So she goes and pulls this shit out, and then goes and talks about and twists the facts around just a little bit with Lysa Arryn about how she wanted Peter so bad, and that she went and accused her, Sansa, of doing things with him and tormented her because of it and everything else. And that basically then what happened is she was a witness to what happened, and Peter was trying to talk her down from the ledge, so to speak. And that she basically was just like, I can't go on living anymore, you know, because I can't have you, and because she was paranoid that Sansa was doing things with him and everything else. So it's really neat how she went and she took and she embedded the lie in what was mostly a truth. Most of it was true. She just switched around a couple of the important key facts and said things in the right manner to make that lie into a believable truth, right? And as we know from this show, the best woven lies are ones that are rooted mostly in truth, right? Primarily in truth. But I mean, absolutely put on a clinic. These people were like and they're one of the women companies like hugging her, and it's okay, darling. And then she goes and she looks and lets Peter and the audience know that, like, yeah, I just played them like a fucking fiddle, you know? Absolutely wonderful. The scene was done so well. We wind up seeing then too that Robin Arryn is going to go, and now that he doesn't have a teat to suck on anymore, he's going to go and kind of be sent out into the world a little bit to kind of tour the Vale, probably come to an untimely death, which will wind up leaving Peter in charge, I'm guessing. Or maybe Peter's just doing it so he can make some adjustments and things like that on the fly while he's out and about. I'm not really sure. I just know that he was pretty hyped up on getting getting him out of there, right? So, oh, excuse me. And that little kid's a weirdo anyway, that Robin Arryn. I think he actually like has a mental problem. But so Sansa goes, and what was great about this is there was a scene then after that where he comes into her room. Peter comes into her room. And the whole time since he took her from King's Landing, all she was asking is, why'd you do this? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do this? In this scene, she goes and says, because he says, why did you do that, right? He's asking her now. And she says, well, think about it. If I told the truth, right, and they'd obviously put you to death, what would they do to me, right? And he's like, oh, I see. And he goes, better to gamble on the devil you know than the one you don't, right? And I love some of the lines in the dialogue in this movie. It's just so good. Because that's so true, right? She knows Peter is a scumbag and that he's a backstabbing, vicious piece of shit that really only wants to just have the throne. Even if he sits on the throne and the whole world is burnt down around him, he just wants to be that leader, right? That he wants to have that power, that throne, right? She knows that. She also knows from him kissing her and from the things that he said that he absolutely adores her because she reminds him of his one and only true love, Catelyn Stark, who we know is dead. So she is so smart in this, because now instead of playing the game, the righteous, the loyal, I gotta have my honor because that's what Daddy taught me, and Daddy got his head cut off for having his honor, because this is clearly not a show or a book series that's about being justified or about doing the right thing. We know that. You do the right thing, and most of the time you end up fucking dead, right? So Sansa is very smart in the sense that now she's doing things, she's playing the game for herself, right? She knows damn well that if she goes and allies herself with Peter Baelish, that who knows, maybe she'll eventually get the shot to be the queen that she wants to be, because he wants the throne, right? She knows that he wants to get in her pants, right? Let's play the game. Maybe in this whole messed up thing, she can wind up getting some type of vengeance upon those that hurt her and her family, and the Lannisters, right? So I really like how and I don't know if any of that's ever going to come to pass, that's just speculation on my part. I, however, feel that she's now finally got to a turning point where she's playing the game, right? And she knows what she's doing. And that's kind of a theme with the Stark Girls period, because Arya is also learning from the Hound that it's a cruel world and there's some things that you have to do that may not be what you were taught to do. They may not be the honorable thing, but it's what you have to do, right? And that segues into the next scene, because as the end of this scene plays out, we wind up seeing, we presume later on that day, maybe the next day, Sansa goes, and it looks like she's dyed her hair. It looks like black or brown or what have you. So she's obviously still keeping undercover, because you can't, she's an enemy of the throne, right, of the crown, because she's wanted for the murder of King Joffrey or conspirating with Tyrion, whatever, right? So she's still got to keep low, but she comes down and she's got this beautiful dress on, and she looks very, very attractive. And it comes down and just kind of has like this smile, like this devilish grin. And I think it's like, hey, you want me to be my mom? I'll be. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. You can show me your little finger now. Anyways, so that as that scene ends, we wind up getting a brief scene between Arya and the Hound as they actually approach the Eyrie, right? And as they approach it, they're talking, and Arya's pissed off because Joffrey has been killed, and it wasn't her that got to kill him, and she didn't get to see the look on his face and everything else. So the Hound winds up explaining that, yeah, there is no substitute for that look on somebody's face that you hate seeing them die and this and that. And they have some more of their sort of friendly banter back and forth, right? As they get to the gates of the Eyrie to announce themselves, before the long walk down there, down the twisting, winding, dangerous path to get to that fortress, they say, well, announce yourselves. And he says, Sandor Clegane, the Hound, with my traveling companion, Arya Stark, right? Here to see her Aunt Liza Arryn, And obviously he wants to ransom her and get his money and get the fuck out of Dodge. She, would like to have a joyful reunion with a family member. She doesn't even know that her sister's there, because nobody knows that, right? And what do these guys tell her? Well, we're sorry, but Lady Arryn died a few days ago. She took her life or she committed suicide, whatever they wind up saying to her, right? And Arya goes and just like cracks this smile and just literally just starts busting out, laughing out loud, right? And at first I was like, this is kind of silly, because it's like a goofy little girl, silly giggle. But you think about what's happened to this girl since she wound up seeing her father beheaded. Well, she technically didn't see it, but she knows what happened, right? She winds up going and kind of trying to sneak out and get smuggled out of the city. She winds up getting attacked. They get attacked and captured and brought into slavery. And she winds up going and obviously going to Harrenhal, right? And then winds up becoming the cupbearer for Tywin Lannister, one of the people that she hates and wants to kill, and has to kind of keep up this guise the whole time, right? And dodge and duck and, stay out of the way. And then after that, all the series of events that have happened to her, then wind up all this stuff that happened with the Brotherhood, and then the Hound, right? And then the Hound goes and takes her on this journey as her captor all the way to see, at the site of the Red Wedding, right? To go and see, only to get right there, to almost get reunited with her mother and her brother Robb, right? And then to go and to get hit in the head by him, by the Hound, and pulled out of there because he sees that everything's going to hell and everybody's getting massacred. She was right there, so close, And then the events that they've had that have unfolded during the course of this season to get to the Vale, to the Eyrie, to see her Aunt Liza, right? Her sister's within grasp, within arm's reach, but she doesn't know it. And Sansa has no idea that she's right out there either. And they never got along very well as siblings. But for God's sakes, man, George Martin, please, can you ever give us a win, man? Anyway, she busts out into this hysterical laughter, and that's how the scene winds up ending. And honestly, it's like you got to feel for the girl. And really, her laughter, I think, was completely justified. I think it was. She's really feeling like, what do I have to do? For Christ's sakes, what do I have to do? The next scene takes us back to Meereen, but this time the focus is on Sir Jorah Mormont and Sir Barristan. Sir Barristan winds up getting handed by some random child that looks like a Meereen, some little boy, gets handed this scroll with the seal, and it has the hand on it, the hand of the king, right? And he reads this scroll and then goes and calls Sir Jorah over on the side to talk to him. And what it is it's either a copy of, or it's the original, or it's the information about the pardon that was going to be given to him, the royal pardon, back when Robert Baratheon was still alive, and when he was spying on Daenerys, and obviously her brother Varys, and giving that information, or Viserys, I'm sorry, and giving the information, transmitting it through whatever network he does to Varys, the spy. That's what I meant to say, the spider. And I had a feeling that was going to come back and bite him in the ass. And now we see from a couple episodes ago, or maybe it was an episode ago, because it was a couple weeks, with Tywin when he went and he asked Mace Tyrell to go and fetch him a pen and paper and whatnot. He knows that Sir Barristan and Sir Jorah are these great war, battle-hardened, very smart commanders and are very good advisors to Daenerys, who's becoming a threat. So what better way than to take them out than to cause dissension amongst the ranks from across the narrow sea, right? So he sent this to Sir Barristan, somehow got it into his hands. Sir Barristan goes and confronts Jorah about it, and he says, have you told? And Jorah says, he admits to it, but he goes and he says, have you told Daenerys? And he says, no, I haven't. I wanted to be a man and basically give you a fair shake and come present it to you first and let you know what was going on. And he goes, well, could I please talk to her? And I'd like to talk to her in private. And Sir Barristan says, you'll never be alone with her again. And right there in that moment, my heart sunk, right? Because whether you like Sir Jorah or you don't like him or whatever the case is, I personally am in the column that I like the guy. I never really felt that romantic tension that a lot of people did between him, because he's like in his 40s and Daenerys looks like she's about like 19 or 20. I know she's very young. And I know that in Westeros, it doesn't seem to matter as they, behead and rape whoever, women, children, kids, it doesn't matter. But my thought was always that this was his way of redeeming himself and having someone to believe in, and that he was more of like a mentor / father figure, maybe older brother figure, as opposed to like a sexual thing, right? But anyway, regardless, putting that aside, it's very heart-wrenching to see this, because what Daenerys winds up doing is that she winds up playing right into Tywin Lannister's hands, right? Tywin wants to cause dissension amongst the ranks, and when he goes in front of her to speak to her, she's very obviously pissed off, and rightfully so. Their relationship started off on a bad note. You cannot start a relationship off on he came to her and her brother and was going to be this loyal servant, and really he was just a scumfuck spy that was trying to go and spy enough to be able to get a pardon to work his way back into Westeros, right? We find out, though, from what he said, and it's truly touching and moving, that he fell in love with her along the way. I thought that he kind of fell in love with the ideals that she had going, and he could see what kind of a great person she would become, and he thought that would be a better thing to back than to go back to the kind of lies and the corruption from the usurper of Robert Baratheon that really is Westeros, for the most part. That's how I felt. But we can tell, because he even says at one point, he says, I loved you, or I love you, Khaleesi. She's cold as ice with him, and she tells him basically, get the fuck out of Dodge. You cannot be trusted. And he tries to go and approach her, and she says, don't presume to ever touch me again. Don't come near me. You're gone. You're done. You have until morning to get out of Meereen, and if you're not, I'll have your head thrown into the freaking, into the bay, into the Slaver's Bay, right? So it was a very gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching, sudden turn of events for me, because to tell you the truth, I felt like in the back of my mind that was going to come back to bite him in the ass, but then I was like, nah, you know what? Maybe not. Who knows? Maybe she'll be forgiving. She knows that he was a slaver. She knows that he was this. She knows that he did all these things in his past, and maybe he'll be able to explain it and say, listen, I was doing what I had to do at the time, but then I wound up, believing in the cause or loving you or whatever, right? And it's just gut-wrenching, because you wind up seeing this, this scene after everything's played out, and you can tell it bothers and affects her, too, as stoic and queen-like as she's trying to act. But Sir Jorah, you feel for the guy, and he winds up going, and then, of course, you see him just kind of walking across the desert, and again, just very, very dismal and bleak. The next scene that segues into the final scene is in King's Landing, and honestly, we were, this being hyped up as the Mountain versus the Viper episode, really, you were starting to get nervous, because there was only like 10 or 15 minutes left in the actual, episode. And nothing had even been seen. No build-up, nothing. And I honestly think that was a mistake. I think the fight itself was fine. It portrayed out in the perfect amount of time and everything else, and was done very well. I think that leading up to it, though, there should have been a little bit more to build that anticipation, right? But anyway, all gripes aside about that, we wind up getting a very nice scene between Tyrion and Jaime, and Tyrion's in his jail cell. And it's right before he's going to be called, and the anticipation is killing him, And Jaime has brought him some wine, and this conversation plays out like it may be Tyrion's last time to hang with his brother and have a drink, and it very well may be. And they wind up sitting down and just kind of talking with each other amongst having drinks. And Tyrion, of course, is scared shitless, and he's just like, "Do you think Oberyn's even got a chance? You know, he couldn't have got the name the Red Viper for nothing, right? He's got to be good at fighting." And Jaime's like, "I don't know. I've never seen him fight, you know." And everybody knows how much of just a brutal, just killing machine the Mountain is, right? So then they went into what I thought was kind of a metaphor for a lot of different things. He went into this story about this cousin they had that was basically had been dropped on his head type of thing, or fell down or whatever, and was more or less like mentally retarded. And all he did all day long was go outside and smash these beetles, right? And that's what he did. That was like his life's thing. And the story plays out, and it sounds almost like Tyrion was obsessed with finding out why his cousin smashed these beetles. But in my mind, it was really just a metaphor for the way Tywin just sort of crushes everybody that is in his way, or that's in the way of his legacy, all the family bullshit, always hating on and really trying to do away with him, and really just his whole crime of being an imp, right? And then it also kind of got me as that, like, it was a metaphor for the Mountain. The Mountain just basically is a killing machine. He just crushes things. We don't know why he's like that. He just does that. And we know from the story from the Hound that he's a piece of shit even to his family members, right? As he, physically disfigured, horribly disfigured his brother for bullshit reason when they were younger. Anyways, metaphors aside and everything else, the whole story was very touching, and it kind of gave you some insight into Tyrion and just his whole mental makeup during this and everything else. And again, like I said, it plays out very much like, hey man, I'm just scared and I just need somebody to talk to, and this may be our last chance to do so, So him and Jaime, again, it was a very, very cool scene, and really Tyrion as well as Jaime are two of my favorite characters personally in the series, as well as I believe my wife as well. My son likes a couple of different characters, but we'll get to that later. So the last scene of the episode winds up, coming up, and they have this, everybody's gathered, and Maester Pycelle comes out, and he's starting to go and give this long speech about under the sight of the seven gods and this and that, and then Tywin kind of goes and just, like, signals for the hornblower to blow his horn so this idiot will get up, move on, and we can get on with this fight. And we see, Oberyn he's overconfident. He's completely confident. He's like, I'm not going to lose. I'm not going to die. I mean, even his wife, Arya, is like, don't die on me today. He's like, no, not today, And he's just got this smug smirk, this cold, calculated, like, I'm in charge of my own destiny. I'm going to take this big fucker down, right? And so many people, myself included, thought that the obvious thing to have happen was this great character portrayed by Pedro Pascal of Prince Oberyn, introduced this season and has become a fan favorite. I know a personal favorite of mine as well as my wife's. Every time he's on the screen, he just steals the scene. Absolutely wonderful job. He is Prince Oberyn Martell to me. And and I thought, okay, well, as unjust and unfair as this series can sometimes be, he's going to somehow prevail over the Mountain and kill the Mountain, because we're not going to have Tyrion die, right? And Oberyn's this new character and everything else, So as they get into the battle, and we see the Mountain, just this giant hulking behemoth with his armor on and everything else, multiple layers of it, leather over chain mail, over, actual armor plating. Oberyn has this light armor on. He chooses to wear no helmet. He winds up using what essentially looks like a spear or a pike. Looks like a 7 or 8 foot, just wooden spear with obviously with a metal tip on it. And the one caveat that I hope we can take away from this is I really hope that his whole master of knowing a lot about poisons and everything like that, I hope plays into things down the road. But the fight though played out and was done masterfully. Okay, it was absolutely wonderful. He started out, and the whole thing was basically about, he knew he could kill the Mountain at any time, but it wasn't about that. It was about getting the Mountain to confess that he had raped and killed his sister, and that also he had killed, her children, and that he was ordered by Tywin Lannister to do it. And that's really what he wanted from him. That's his thing of it. It would be too easy just to kill the Mountain. It would be too easy even just to kill Tywin. He wants the revenge, but he also wants that justice in knowing that he has that closure, right? So as he's dancing around, and he's just absolutely wonderful, the movements that he has and everything like that, it reminds you very much of like Serial, the dancing sort of swordsman, from Bravos. A lot of very fluid, very circular movements and what have you. And also reminds me of a couple of different martial arts as well, but I won't get too heavily into that, or this review will be longer than the damn episode. It's already probably getting close to there. So, anyway, as everything plays out in the battle and it goes back and forth a little bit, you can see that he's just trying to lure the mountain in, old Sir Gregor Clegane, And he does. He does a great job of it, He winds up, he flips his helmet, gets his helmet off of him, really kind of pisses him off, gets him with a nice slash, And the mountain goes and winds up coming and just cutting his spear up, right? And he goes and dances artfully away from him, dodges a couple of blows, has a squire, whoever it is, give him another spear, gets back into it with him, winds up going and effortlessly. And the whole time that he's dancing around him, of course, every few seconds, spitting out something about wanting this confession, he winds up going and hitting him, it looks like in the back of the calf, brings him down to one knee, Actually goes and then looks like he stabs him right in the chest with his spear, and the mountain falls down, falls back over. There's a spear sticking out of his chest, And he comes over and grabs the spear out of his chest and says, "Oh no, you're not going to die yet. We haven't got our confession yet," right? So now he starts toying with him, and it's a game. And ultimately, the game that he plays is his downfall. He lets his emotions get in the way of doing what needs to be done. The same thing that Ned Stark did in a lot of ways in the first season, right? And that was something that, honestly, I saw it, and I didn't see it like live when it was happening, when the episodes were coming out, because I didn't get on board of Game of Thrones until season 2 had just finished. My wife and I watched the first 2 seasons on HBO On Demand, and then we watched season 3 all throughout each week, each Sunday, and then now season 4, the same thing. I'm so much more emotionally tied, though, and which I said at the beginning of this review, for those of you that have stayed this long, I'm so much more emotionally invested and tied into this now, though, that things bother me on a completely cellular level, it seems like, because as this goes and plays out and whatnot, and you just know that he's taken too long toying with him and going to kill him, so, and the mountain's just laying there sprawled out, arms out, legs out, right, and he's just this huge beast of a man, probably 7.5 feet tall. God only knows, I don't know what he was spawned from, but it's like he lived next to a power plant or a nuclear power plant or something, man. And his mom was, must have fucked Superman. I have no idea. This dude's huge, right? So, you could paint him green and he could be the Hulk. But so, and then the most gut-wrenching moment of it, and honestly, I think a lot of people probably had to turn away, but, I wound up watching the whole thing like an idiot. And this is probably the most visually disturbing scene, and that's saying a lot for Game of Thrones, but that I've ever probably seen in any movie or any TV show ever. He winds up, as Oberyn walks by him, he goes and he's able to trip his legs out for him and get Oberyn to fall. He's able to quickly go and use that to his advantage and use whatever last burst of strength he has to get on top of him, right? And then he goes and it looks like he punches his teeth out. He's got his gauntlets and his bracers on. One hit takes his teeth out. And then he goes, and now the mountain won't shut up. He grabs the side of Oberyn's head and his thumbs and starts pushing his fucking eyes back into his socket. And the whole time he starts going and giving his confession, and he's like, "Yeah, I killed her. I raped her and then I killed her just like this." And as he does it and goes and puts the pressure down on it, and I mean the scream that comes out of Oberyn's mouth as well as Arya, it's absolutely heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching. And then you go and they take the camera away for a second and bring it back, and his brains and head and everything is just exploded and crushed in by this big frickin' meathead of a machine monster, whatever you want to call it, this mountain. And then the mountain goes and falls over onto him, but obviously he falls over onto his back, and we don't know if he's dead or not. Don't even really give two shits. And the episode winds up ending shortly after that. Everybody's sitting there in dismay and horror. And it was amazing because you saw Tywin and Cersei start to get really uncomfortable, and you start to, as the mountain was losing, right, during the course of this fight. And then you saw a point where there was a glimmer of hope in Tyrion's eye, and Jaime looked like he was actually smiling at one point. It all winds up turning to ash in your mouth, though, because Oberyn, who is a great character and should not be dead, is dead. He kind of got his justice because he got a confession, and I'm presuming that the mountain is either mortally wounded or maybe he did have poison on that spear, and the fucker will wind up dying a slow, horrible death. Anyway, I don't know. But then at the end, you get that satisfying just sort of grin look from Lena Headey, who plays Cersei. And I've met her before, actually, the actress. She's a wonderful woman, but she plays such a just despicable, hateful, spiteful bitch. And that face that she makes, man, I just wanted to group through the TV and just wring her freaking neck, And man, my heart just sank, though. It sank for Tyrion. It sank for everything, because then Tywin goes and announces that the Mountain obviously is the winner, and that Tyrion's punishment, because he was found guilty of regicide, or basically when you do the trial by combat, you know, if you win, you get off scot-free. If you lose, whatever charges you were accused of, I guess, just become the charges set in stone. And it doesn't matter anyway, because Shay's testimony wound up sealing the deal for him. But he's sentenced to death by beheading. And that's how the episode ends off, man. And I tell you, it was one of the most emotionally disturbing, gut-wrenching things that I have ever seen. Not just because of the physical brutality of it, but just because, I kept thinking in my mind, man. George Martin, can you give us a win here? You know, I get it, okay? I get it that it's an unjust world, but can you stop beating me over the fucking head with it? Occasionally you can go and you can do something and let justice prevail, or let goodness prevail. And then you can have a little variety amongst things, instead of introducing all these characters, some you like, some you don't, and then just randomly killing off anyone that you fucking feel like at any particular time for whatever purpose. The only silver lining that I can take from this is that I truly, truly hope that this winds up having severe repercussions in the already sort of shaky existence that Dorne and the Martells have with King's Landing and obviously the Lannisters. I'm only hoping that this winds up sparking some sort of conflict or war like Ned Stark's beheading did, with Robb Stark obviously, then going and trying to take over everything and what have you. So that's the only silver lining and caveat that I can get from this, because at the end of the day, I really do, I have to say, to Pedro Pascal, man, what a wonderful choice, what a wonderful actor, what a great job casting. And this is a guy who I never even really heard of him before. Just knocked it out of the park. He embodied Tyrion, Oberyn, Tywin. Those are guys that I believe are not actors. I believe that they're those characters, and just so well done. So well done. We'll give a slow clap and a rest in peace to Prince Oberyn. And just an absolutely gut-wrenching episode. Probably the best of the series so far. Arguably the best and the worst, I guess, depending on how you look at it. But my God, now I wonder what's going to happen. Tyrion's life looks like it's going to be done and about to be snuffed out. And the preview for next week's episode looks like it's going to be the fight of Castle Black, obviously. So I don't know what to think. Like I said, my heart's in my ass, and I had trouble even just getting through and doing this review. So my episode question for you, though, brothers and sisters, is really, I guess, just what were your thoughts on, what are your thoughts on the fact that it always seems like we're getting beat over the head by George Martin with this, the world is unjust, Everything that happened in here was very gut-wrenching. Stuff with Jorah, seeing that Theon has no trace of himself whatsoever. I mean, there was not a lot of positives going on in here whatsoever, unless you want to go and you want to count Ygritte, letting Gilly live, who's a character I don't care too much about anyway. But, man, just let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Thank you for watching, as always. I'm sorry I got so long-winded. Just really loved and really tied to and very emotional about this series, about this episode in particular. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching all of you in the next one, Nation.
Remember to subscribe to my other channels and follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram too.